How did you feel about Diana? 99.9% of them say, I loved her.
Lee Sansom was Diana's bodyguard.
How did you feel when you found out?
Well, it was a shock.
So Lee is ex-Royal Military Policeman, martial arts champion, private military contractor, and expert in close protection. Worked with some stars in even Sylvester Stallone, and of course the royal family, specifically Princess Diana. Unless
you yourself are an alpha leader, no matter what you do, you're not going to lead that team. No matter what you do, they will never be the best that they can be unless you invest into yourself, understand how to be a leader. It's not what you do for yourself, it's what you do for others that make you a good leader. How you don't criticize. You give top cover all the time. You're there for them. They trust you. They know when it hits the fan, you're the person who's going to step up for them and lead them.
So welcome everybody to Adversities to Assets. I almost stumbled there because we've recently changed the name. It was turning adversity into an asset. It was a bit of a mouthful and a bit long. So it's now Adversities to Assets. And I think you're the second person we've had on today. We've had on the podcast since that change. We're still adjusting to the morning and having to cry on baby over the night. But Lee Sansom, sorry, I almost pronounced that wrong as well. I need to get my words right. That was right though. Sansom, right?
Yeah, unusual name. Everybody gets it wrong, Lewis. Well, yeah, unusual name.
I'm glad it wasn't just me. But I've been doing a lot of research. I should have known your name by now. So apologies. But I've been watching some of the podcasts you've done. Fascinating stories, so much to share, and I think it's going to be very difficult for us to cover all the ground we need to on this podcast. But I'll try and allow you the opportunity to share as much of it as possible. And I'll give you a brief introduction, but it's only going to scratch the surface in terms of what you've done. But got a bit of a introduction here. So Lee is ex-Royal Military Policeman, martial arts champion, private military contractor, and expert in close protection. Worked with some of the world's stars in Olympics, as well as Hollywood stars, even Sylvester Stallone I've got down here. And of course, the royal family, specifically Princess Diana, which I'm sure we're going to be talking about today. Lots of other things in your story and your career that obviously led you to that point of being, one of these, I was going to say, what would you sort of call leaders of the close protection space? Is that something you could say?
Yeah. I suppose really with my experience that I've had all over the world, I've had some fantastic jobs. I was doing something the other day, and somebody said, "Oh, you're an elite in your field." Wow,
that's the word. That makes that fits. That's kind of the word I was looking for, I think.
Yeah, not a word I would use, but I thought, wow, I've never thought of that before. But I've done a lot of stuff. So I was
going to say you've got to be pretty elite to be close protection for the royal family. I think that's pretty up there. so let's talk a little bit about what led you to that, because we'll talk a lot about your book and all the success you've had. Sort of, I guess now you've moved a little bit further outside that industry and are now becoming more of a motivational speaker, which is amazing. I'm looking forward to learning about that because we've got similar messages. We spoke before this call about overcoming adversity, and obviously that's a big part of the podcast. So looking forward to hearing your own challenges and how you're now helping other people. But of course, I guess your career started with that close protection maybe many years ago. So take us back to where it all began.
Well, it's I think when you get to a point in your life or your industry and you look back and you look at the stuff you've done to get there, once you start really delving into it, and that's why the book helped me, but when you start looking back to your childhood, some of the things that you did in your childhood, you think, I get it now. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have done that, and I wouldn't have done this, and I wouldn't have learnt that or learnt this. And I think in the close protection world or the bodyguard world, as people understand it, one of the biggest key skills you really need is this awareness, hyper aware. And it's difficult to teach. You can teach it and people can do it, but I naturally do it and I'm naturally like that. And it's only when I started thinking and considering, well, what made me like that? But then you look back to your childhood and then you start seeing things there that occurred, in your life. I was bullied at school and generally, I keep things to myself. I'm not that kind of, drama person. I don't go talking about many things. You know, if you tell me a secret, it's never going to leave me. So I don't gossip. I don't know all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But when I was really thinking about it, when I was bullied, the thought of fighting when I was young just terrified me. And although I put a brave face on it, it was something that really upset me deeply. And then I started getting bullied by this kid, and quite badly, so going to school, I would have to work out where this kid was at any time of the day, vary my routes to go to school. All this stuff that I was doing as a 11, 12-year-old kid, and I would plan my day out meticulously that I would never cross paths with this kid. And after you've done that for 2 or 3 years of your life, you become pretty good at seeing stuff before it happens, or you see indicators. In the military or in the private military section, you call them combat indicators. That when you see something and then you see something else, and you see something else, it's telling you what's going to happen in the future. And that's a key skill as well. So, even down to you see somebody at school and they were one of their friends. So the likelihood is they might be coming around the corner next, or, all that stuff. And so I think that although it was a very unpleasant time for me, it set me up to do things I did later on in life. And I think if you'd have told me then, at that time of my life, Lee, you're going to be an international martial arts player, you're going to be a lead bodyguard in the close protection industry, and I'd be like, are you joking? That's nuts. But yeah. So
you've already shared there, a very strong message of turning adversity into an asset, really, or adversities to assets, because that could have sent someone down the complete other path, being a very shy, awkward, not being able to, stand up for themselves kind of personality because they were being compressed from a young age. But by the looks of it, you kind of use that to completely flip the script and decide to you use those advantages to serve you better in the future. So how was you able to flick that switch then? Because obviously you must have had a certain element of awareness to say, well, I can use this actually now to do something else.
Yeah, it was. I remember the exact time that switch did flick, and
okay.
And when I feel it now, I can get goose pimples. I feel really empowered. It's insane. But when I was brought up, just north of Manchester on a tough, massive housing estate, at the age of 15, I discovered alcohol. Now that was a game changer, because as we know, when you take alcohol, you default to your your fight or flight, and there's various things in your brain happen, and you behave differently, right? And I started getting brave with alcohol in my mind. No, I didn't do anything. I started getting a little bit brave, And then we're in this pub. It's like a pub disco type thing back in the day, and it was packed. I must have been about 16, and the bouncers there were like real tough blokes and men, and I'm like skinny 16-year-old. And this one guy, he was a real bully, and he'd take great delight in just banging people out in there. And it was a rough place, or tough place. I don't know what's the difference between rough and tough, but anyway, I think I'd said something to someone, or with drink, and the bouncers were all drinking as well back in the day then as well. So he grabbed me and he threw me out the pub, and I said something to him, and it must have sounded like a challenge to a fight. And he said to me, right, do you want to fight? And I said, yes, come on then. And then, when instantly you say something, you think, what have I done? And then, so out he comes, and then the bar emptied because everyone's like, fight. With this guy. So I walked around the side of this pub, and there's like a car park, unlit car park. I say a car park, it's just like scrub ground. And everyone's there, and we squared up, and I'm looking up at him. It was a big unit. Anyway, the fight started, and it was like an act of God. I could just hit him, and I hit him hard, but he couldn't hit me. I could just naturally do it. Anyway, so in the end, he's on his knees, this guy, and he's crying, and he's marked up, really marked up. I didn't have anything on me at all. And I just felt this. I was like, shocked myself. I was like, wow, this is crazy. And everyone's around is going, wow, this is nuts. So that was it. That was done. When you see these fights with stamping on the heads and kicking them and all that, I've never done any of that. And then I look in the crowd. There's a couple of hundred people there. There's the guy that bullied me.
Oh, wow.
And I looked at him in the eye and I said, right, you're next. And he went, I don't want any. And that was the turning point where I just discovered not only could I fight, but I enjoyed it.
Interesting.
That's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah. How did you feel then with that? Did you feel powerful? Or what did it give you?
Yeah. Empowered, powerful. It was as if all this dread and fear in my life just exited my body. And I became this person I always wanted to be, I think. And that was the turning point.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, I shouldn't say cool, but it is. I guess, the people watching this go, don't condone violence, and I don't. But obviously, it can be a moment in your time to take that power back. And it's not that, I guess, you didn't continue on. Well, we'll soon find out. But I should imagine you channeled that aggression or that violence into something a bit more productive, I think.
Yeah, I did. It took me a while, and these were different times then as well, Lewis. The environment I lived in, the toughest survived. It was a tough place, and I then started doing some fighting in the local pubs, and but I think what it was I knew now I didn't have to back down. So if anybody got in my face, I'm ready to go. So I had a period of that, and then started in the football hooligan, they used to call it then. It's casuals now, isn't it? So I started doing that, and again I was pretty good at it. And the local team was a team called Burnley, so I used to go home and away watching them, and every single match getting into fights and things like this as a young man. And I suppose it just found myself a new Ferrari. I wanted to drive it, And then, but at the same time, then I started karate. And so this is going on at the same time. So I go to the karate school, and it was a fighting school. It was quite a well-known school at the time, and I could just do it. I could just do karate, and it just overtook my life. And I know we had about, I think, 4 or 5 fighting teams of 5 people going from black belt down to the lower grades in karate, the coloured belts. And after about 4 or 5 months, I was on the A team, so there was 4 black belts and me as a white belt. I could just win at the sport. I could just do it, and I loved it. And then it got to a point where I've been fighting in the town, and one of my friends had been really badly beaten up. I found him in a doorway on my way home, and he was really badly beaten up. And I spoke to him, "Are you okay, mate?" And I remember, this is crazy. And then there's this big guy came from across the road, and it was him that had done it. And so he started fighting me. He attacked me. Anyway, I kicked him really like a karate kick. I suppose now looking back, it's obviously what I've been taught, and it ruptured his spleen. I didn't know at the time. I kicked him and hit him, and he went down. And then there's a group of his friends there, and his girlfriend was there. She was crying. So I called a taxi over, and I picked him up, and I put him in the taxi and said to his girlfriend, take him home. And I found out later that I'd ruptured his spleen. He went to hospital, and that's quite a serious injury, right? And we became friends after this, and he apologised to me and all that. And then my karate instructor found out.
Just quickly on that one, just because I'm just curious, what made him want to be your friend after that?
I think he's a real local tough guy, and I think he just had a lot of respect for me after that.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because I found that in my past, or even now, sometimes someone can be a bit argumentative or a bit annoying or a bit aggressive, and if you give it back, even back then or even now, sometimes where I'm just like, I'm not going to play sort of nice to this response, but then sometimes they come back and they start being really nice after that. So some people just respond well to that. They react, they respect it, or they relate to it, or I don't know what it is, but yeah, I found that confrontation sometimes, not necessarily in an aggressive way, but in a meet your match kind of way, sometimes can be a positive outcome, which is a little bit controversial.
Yeah, it is, and also as well, this is I think I was pretty calm at the time because I knew what I could do. So, and I've always been quite calm about it. I think when you get somebody who's quite aggressive, I'd seen what he'd done to my friend, and he'd obviously, when he hit him, he was down. He's obviously done things to him on the ground because he was a mess, and he was unconscious when I found him. And I think when you do get real aggressive people, and when you don't react in the way that they've learned that people do react to them, either in fear or in anger, And you're just like in the middle there going, okay. Inside their brain, something starts going, there's something wrong here. This person isn't reacting like they should be reacting. And it sends these danger signals, you know, and the chemicals that they release in their brain is so confusing to them that a lot of the time they'll leave it. Or if you can keep calm, it gives you the chance to exit, you know, if you can, which is obviously the best thing because we don't want to start fighting anybody. But interestingly, there was a guy, this is wind on probably about a year and a half, and there's this local guy, and he was a real badass guy, and he asked me to go outside for a fight. We were at a
just randomly, just because he'd heard your reputation, or
he'd been he was threatening some of my friends, and we were just there for a drink, and I must have said something to him because they just want you to say one word. That's enough, isn't it? One word
or one look.
One look, that's it. So he says, right, come on. I said, well, look, mate, let's go outside. I don't want to fight in here with all these people. We're out for a night out. Let's go outside. So we went onto this car park, funny old car park story, and he's there raging. So I've created distance between him, and I said, look, mate, after we've finished, whatever happens, I'm going back in there to finish my drink and my night out with my friends. I hope you don't mind. I said, I'm going to come here, go over there, and I'm going to take my shirt off. Not that I was big and muscular or anything. I said, because I don't want to get blood on it. I don't want to damage it because I want to go and finish my night out. Are you okay with that? You could see him going, what is this guy on? So I do that, fold it up, put it on this little wall, and I come back. I said, hey, you ready to go now? And he's looked at me, and his anger started to subside.
I bet.
And he said, I don't want to fight you. I said, are you sure? Yeah, I don't want to fight you. We're not going to go back in there. You're going to come around and blindside me, are you? No, I don't want to fight you. I said, okay, let's go back in. No. So I went back in, and that was it, done. Anyway, about two weeks later, he killed someone, this guy.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a tough guy. But I think that taught me a lot as well, that you can talk people down just by being calm and assertive. You know, so yeah.
So when was the sort of transition from that sort of street fighting kind of into a profession?
Well, my martial arts instructor, Paul, he said to me, "Look, Lee, you've got to stop. If you don't stop, we'll have to take your karate license off you, and you won't be able to fight again." And the thought of not being able to compete in karate it outweighed that. Because it is a dopamine rush, right? You know, when any addiction to anything, whether it's addiction to work, whether it's addiction to running, alcohol, drugs, anything, you know, that dopamine rush that you need, and you've got to feed it. I was getting that from the karate, so I didn't need it anymore. It didn't serve me anymore. So it was overnight. I just stopped it.
Wow.
Instantly.
Was it just the career in the martial arts at first before you moved into the security, or when was that?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was competing. I was competing nationally, getting on the national team, and everything was bright and rosy. And I was an apprentice in a steel factory. And when I came out of my time, there were 4-year apprenticeships then. A friend of mine had gone to work in South Africa. So I went over to South Africa, worked there for a couple of years, then came back, and I didn't have anything, just my suitcase. And I was out there with my first wife, and it didn't work out for her. She really didn't like it there. So we had to leave, and we left with nothing. And I really didn't want to leave. I loved it there. I loved South Africa. And so came back with nothing really, and went in. Karen and Stephen, really good friends of ours. We stayed with them, and we had a small child then. My first daughter, Shemaine, and I didn't have a job, didn't have anything, and I didn't really know what to do. So I was in the pub, the local pub, and I met a guy that I used to go to school with. He was a year younger than me, and I saw him, and I saw a couple of his mates, and they just looked a bit strange, you know, and it was called Paul, and I said, Paul, you know, what are you doing, mate? He said, I'm in the army. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm a military policeman. I was like, well, tell me about it. So he told me everything that he was doing and what he wanted to do. I was like, wow, I didn't even know this existed. It's not like normal policing that we would know in civilian life, because they do so many different things, you know. And I thought, wow, that is pretty cool. So you get a house, right, when you join the military. So you're walking into something as well as, you know, your career. So I thought, right, I've got to do this. It's going to tick all these boxes for me. I'm going to be able to look after my family, get a house, get it all squared away. So I went to the jobs, to the army careers, and within, I don't know, maybe 6-7 weeks, I was in. Wow. And did my 6 months training in Chichester. And with the Royal Military Police, and I joined in '85 and got out in '95. And I had a
What were you up to over those 10 years?
So I started in Germany. In a place called Sennelager, which was a massive NATO training camp, huge, thousands and thousands of soldiers, mainly fighting and getting drunk. And so, as a young man, then with all these skills that I had, it was such an exciting place to be. And so I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. I was there for nearly 3 years. Did all sorts of things, from actually policing, and then doing joined a little group of people, and we used to do like protracted investigations, which was kind of cool. Do all sorts of stuff, and then I became a police dog handler there. So I had my own dog, and this was the best bit, because I used to go out to all the fights and all that kind of stuff, call the dogs, and off we'd go, And that was such an exciting time to be around a group of people, these military police people that you trust. I think that's the thing with the military. People don't get it, and you get it in other things. But when you've really got that trust in people, it's a fantastic experience, and it's a life-changing experience. That in business or in various things that you trust people, right? But when you trust somebody with your life, and they trust you with their life, that's a different feeling, isn't it? I just love that feeling. So I thoroughly enjoyed my time in Germany. I did lots of different things, and I carried on with my karate as well at the national level. And then I got an injury, and I was really fit at this stage. I was on the running team, football team, cricket team, played rugby, did my karate, and anytime I could get into sport, I would do it. I was phenomenally fit. And then I was playing basketball for the garrison, and I went up for a basket, and when I landed, my legs wouldn't work, and I just crumpled. I was like, what is going on? And I just lay there for a bit, and then my legs started working again, and I got up, and I thought, wow, that's I just didn't know what it was. And then I then injured my back. I banged it against this piece of wood right in the bottom of my back, and it hit it hard, and I ruptured a disc in my back, which cut off the nerve system to my leg, and it's probably the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. And I had to go to the medical centre. I was in a right state. It was horrible, and my leg was spasming like mad. And I got in the back of an army Land Rover, which is like a medical Land Rover, on this real hard flipping thing. 4 hours drive to the military hospital. And I got there, and I stayed in intensive care for 3 months, and on traction and all sorts. And they were going to do some surgery on me and fuse the spine together. The rupture, the injury was quite bad. And a surgeon came along. I remember his name, Surgeon Captain Clark. And I'm not one for remembering names or anything like this, but this was a life changer. And he was a new surgeon that had come in. The surgeon that was going to do my operation, he'd gone on leave or something, on holiday, and he came in and he said, how old are you, young man? I told him, he said, I'm not doing surgery on you. There's 6 months sick leave.
What do you mean? Oh, you didn't get any surgery? So
no, I didn't get any surgery. He said, you're too young.
You meant that he. Oh, right, okay.
So he said, no, I'll just put you on sick leave. He said, you're too young to have this done. Anyway, I got posted to Catterick in Yorkshire, North Yorkshire, and I did rehab there in the hospital. And I was downgraded, so I couldn't do anything. And in the military, when you're downgraded, you have to get upgraded to then go back into the normal duties, whatever you were doing. So I was on light duty, so I was desk work and stuff like this. And I thought, how do I get upgraded? So I spoke and found out what I had to do to get, the list of things I had to do. This run, that run, this test, set up, whatever I needed. And what I did is I thought, right, I've got to get this done. So I started my married quarter, my house. I started by trying to walk around the house. So I had my hands on the side of the house like that, going from side to side. It took me a couple of weeks until I could go the whole way around. So
what actually was the injury then? It was like a slip disc kind of thing, or?
Yeah. It was a slip disc, but the disc was ruptured, so I couldn't use my leg.
Right. So it was that bad.
the pain was just incredible. And my leg was as thin as my wrist. The whole thing
Wow.
wasted. Anyway, so I did that, and then I was in the gym, and I got all the bits and bobs in the gym, so I could do exercises without load bearing on my back. I've just figured it out, and then I got myself, and I went to an osteopath. And then osteopathy wasn't as popular as it is now. I went to this osteopath, this skinny little guy, and he said, and I hobbled in there, and he said, "What do you want me to do?" I said, "Mate, anything." He said, I was told I wouldn't be able to walk again properly, let alone run. And he said, "Oh, I can fix that." It's like, what? Anyway, he jumped all over me. The cracks were coming out. And I got up, and I was like, wow, I just felt I was walking on air.
Wow.
And I went home, and I went for a run, and I did a half a mile run, and I was so excited. So I trained, got myself upgraded, and then went back into normal soldiering. So that taught me a lot of lessons, and I needed to be really resilient through that period. And I've been introduced to affirmations by this guy, and I started doing affirmations, and really strong affirmations every morning, every night. I do them religiously. I still do them now, and got myself fit again. And I then joined, because I knew, even though I'd got myself past the test, I'd almost cheated the test because I knew what to say and I knew what to do, but I was still in a lot of pain. I was on painkillers and muscle relaxants every day, chucking them down. And so I joined the Special Investigation Branch, which is the military police, probably version of the CID, really. I would say the closest you come to it. So I did the training course. This is the hardest course I've ever done in my life. Passed the course, got in, and then I got posted down to a place called Tidworth. And I worked with the SIB then, which was so interesting, some of the things I did.
What is the SIB? Sorry for myself and anybody that might not know.
Right, so it's a Special Investigation Branch, and they do protracted inquiries, they do deaths, any serious crime, they do all the drug stuff, anything like that, and anything interesting, and it was a fantastic time. I learned so much about how to talk to people, the courses in it, and I just absorbed myself in it, and how to. I suppose it is really how to get information out of people, but they don't understand what you're doing. How to talk to people and how to ask rather than tell, and listen. They're very, very soft skills, and I just got absorbed into it. And then there was an incident at a job I was at, without going into it in too much detail. It's in the book, but something happened. And I was investigating this incident. It was a big drugs incident, and it was being brushed under the carpet. And there was blame being attached to different people from my officer commanding down. And they wanted me to take the blame for this incident. And they said, look, you're a young sergeant in the SIB. Nothing will happen. You'll just get a slap on the wrist and you'll be able to carry on. And we'll just put it down as a mistake. And I said, well, stop. You authorised this. I was just carrying out and doing what I was told. And they said, well, you're going to have to. I said, no, I'm not. I thought this unit was above that. I thought we were there to set standards and all the rest of it. It's not what I signed up for. So I left and I went back to what we call general police duties, like normal policing. And they tried to block it and stop me. And I fought and fought and fought. And in the end, I won. I went around the houses to do it, and I got posted to Northern Ireland, which is where I wanted to go. So I requested to go to Northern Ireland, to this specialist unit within the military police, because I didn't want to go back to general policing duties, because the SIB were hated by the normal police because they did internal affairs and all that kind of stuff, So I went to this specialised unit in Northern Ireland, and I had a fantastic time there. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a difficult place to work at the time when the war was on, or the Troubles as it was called. And then following my time there, and I did some fantastic things, I went to Hong Kong. And I was on the Chinese border with the Gurkha Brigade. Amazing people, really, really lovely people. And I spent a couple of years there. And then I was posted then back to UK. I was due to go over to Northern Ireland again to do this certain type of work that I was going to do. And then I split up with my wife. We split up. And after after something like that, you can't do certain jobs in the military if you've just gone through some kind of trauma like that. So they said, we'll post you back to England, to a place called Donington near Telford, and you're going to have to wait there for 12 months to 18 months before you can go back to Northern Ireland again. And I got back, and it wasn't, I realised then, I needed to move on. And so I left the military in 95. But I had a fantastic time. Met some great people. People I'm still really now close with,
Okay, cool. So I guess that was the foundation of your learning and your training that kind of stepping stone.
Yeah.
Yeah, stepping stone. That is right. Yeah. I was going to say stepping stone, but that's definitely not a word. But was the stepping stone into your sort of close protection stuff? Is that correct?
It was, yeah. It was, Lewis. And interestingly enough, when I was with the military police, I spent most of my time in civilian clothing. Never had any hassle at all, even when I was in uniform. And the soldiers like to fight. They have more respect from the military police than you would have for the normal police here. So, because you've got that authority and, it's a discipline world, but almost got on well with everybody. Even when we're having big punch-ups and fights, they would thank me when I took them back to their guard room, and so I think that was with my martial arts. And when you have that self-confidence in yourself that you don't have to prove yourself to anybody, that deep down inside, yeah, I can do this. I'm not frightened of fighting. Why? Well, I do it all the time in my sport. So I don't have anything to prove. And I think people just get that, So, yeah, it was a real good kind of period in my life where I knew that in the close protection industry for years to come, it stand me in good stead, It's that communication piece as well. Because working as a bodyguard, everybody thinks, it's guns and all this kind of stuff, which it is from time to time. But the biggest thing is the communication that will get you out of trouble rather than get you into trouble, and how to speak to people and conduct yourself and your calmness under pressure. And people like that, and your team like it, and then you become seen as a leader then, when people know that you're the person that when everything's hitting the fan, you're the person that they can look round and you've got this. That's cool.
Yeah, and I guess there would have been so many other skills that maybe you weren't even subconsciously aware of. Molding you into the person you were. And you mentioned that sort of hypervigilance or that hyper awareness. That again, from that small, well, not small, but seemingly small interaction with that bully shaped you into the person that you became. I guess 10 years as a military police officer would have done that over and over and over and over again until the point where you just become, I guess, the right type of person to be looking after other people. So what was the first job into close protection then? Because it wasn't, because you mentioned that you worked with the royal family and you was there throughout Princess Diana and the tragedy that happened there. Looking forward to diving into that. What year was that when that happened?
So the Diana thing happened in 97, and in 95 I left the military and I tried to get a job in the civilian side of things, but I just couldn't do it. And it was just, and I was determined not to enter the security industry or police or anything. But I was just considering what I was going to do. I was living near Telford. I've got a lovely little house there on my own. And a friend of mine said to me, look, the Mohammed Al Fayed, he had a big protection team, and it was well known in the close protection circle. And they said this guy, Paul Henry Greaves, had just taken over as head of security, and he was looking for people. He'd thinned out some of the people on the team, and he was looking for new people. And I knew him. We'd met in Northern Ireland, and we got on and had a few drinks together. And so I called him and said, I'm looking for work. He said, well, come on down. So I went down to London and met him and did all the induction and all the rest of it and joined them, the Al Fayed close protection team, which was a big team at the time. And I spent 4 years there. And during that time, there's so many different roles in a large close protection team, from looking after the security of the house, the buildings, the people, assets, and all. So I did loads of different jobs on that team, which really gave me a real good understanding how it all worked, And then I worked well with these children. A difficult family to work with for many, many people. Very demanding.
Is that the royal family or the?
No, this is the Al Fayed family.
I was going to say, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so he had 4 children with his wife, and then he had his other child, Dodi, from his previous marriage, who was a lot older than Mr. Fayed's children. And then, so, you know, I went all over the world with them. And
It's interesting. You mentioned about the kids there. You said a difficult family to deal with. I mean, I was actually speaking to a guy that I know that's in the security industry, and he said, and I was asking him sort of questions, you know, what sort of issues to get yourself into, and that sort of stuff. He said, to be honest, most of the time, it's me protecting the person from themselves because they're causing the trouble, or the family's causing the trouble. The son's going out picking fights because he's rich and thinks he can do what he wants, and it's actually trying to protect them from themselves most of the time, which I was quite you know, that was quite an interesting insight. Have you found that yourself?
Oh, many times, Lewis. Yeah, with the Fayed family, because the children were young and that we got to do so many different things, and it obviously is a billionaire, and the difference between a millionaire and a billionaire. When it was explained to me, we had a secretary there. We used to call her Miss Moneypenny, aka the James Bond thing. So she did everything for us. She was a fantastic woman, and I remember her saying to me one time that. She said, I'm going to tell you the difference so you can understand it in terms of volume. So if you go to the local sports centre and you look at the swimming pool full of water, get a pint glass and take a pint out. That's 1 million. What's left is 1 billion.
Wow.
So that just resonated with me. You know, and then you kind of get it. So I was with him through the Cash for Questions thing that he went through with the government, and just, you know, it was just incredible. One of the most professional teams I've ever worked with in my life. Great guys, and I'm still really close friends with a lot of the people on that team now. And he's Omar Fayed, who now runs the show. We speak, we're friends, and it's he sent me a really lovely message, you know, when we rekindled our friendship. Because I knew him as a little boy. He was the same age as Damon, my son, who was on the Olympic team. They used to play together in Scotland. And he said, I just want to thank you for the things you did for me that's made me the man I am today. How nice is that?
Yeah, so I guess it's not always about. There's a lot of I guess, support, and I guess it's become an extended part of the family as well. And it's not just sort of sitting there in a suit like most people think, you know, crossing your eyes and pretending you don't exist. But I guess there's a little bit more to it than that.
Yeah. I mean, I spent more time with their family than mine.
Oh yeah.
And so as things went on, I've looked after Mr. Fayed as well, so I was on his team, and so I got to work with all the family, and I really got on with them all well, and he didn't faze me. I think he's a very intimidating man. You know, I've learned so much just watching his attention to detail and the things he did. I was just blew me away, and he didn't intimidate me. So I think when he let one go at me for whatever reason. Sometimes he's a busy guy, you know, and he'd just see there'd be no reaction there. And the first thing I'd say, oh, well, I'm sorry, whether I'd done anything or not. And he knew that. And I think that's why he trusted me with his kids, you know. And then the Dodi Diana thing started going on. And I was in Saint-Tropez. We go out to certain places every year. The family would go. They have residences all over the world. So every year they go to Saint-Tropez, generally for between 2 to 4 weeks, sometimes longer. So I'd been out in Saint-Tropez for a couple of weeks, and I'd come back for a couple of weeks off while the other team. So we had a team that worked and a team that was off. Then you changed every couple of weeks. So I was going back out to Saint-Tropez. I think the family went from Saint-Tropez to Iceland. I think they went with the other team. But when we were going back out to Saint-Tropez on my 2 weeks off, I was told that the princess was coming and the princes. So I knew this was happening. And then out we went to Saint-Tropez, and I met Princess Diana when she first came. So she comes off the Jonicle, his ship, one of his ships, and in she comes on this tender, this small boat that runs people from the ship to shore, as you know. And I welcomed her ashore in Saint-Tropez. And what an incredible woman.
So because you've spoken openly about sort of what you believe happened with Princess Diana, you happy to share some stuff around that?
Yeah. It was interesting, you know, that at that time, just so everybody listening understands, that nobody knew she was there. And when she came, and the princess came later, and everything was cool. Everything was really good. And the family was there, and everything was great. And then the paparazzi discovered we were there. And it's not like today's, you know, with social media and all the rest of that, it just didn't exist. And a couple of paparazzi came, and they were very, very aggressive. And before then, I'd taken the princess down into Saint-Tropez town. Nobody recognised her. Sunglasses, hat on, casual stuff, you know. And And that's the thing when that you learn all this. It's like fieldcraft, you know. If you're in a place where you're not supposed to be, dressed slightly differently, you could be the most famous person in the world and nobody will recognise you because you're just not looking for it. It's incomprehensible.
No one expects to see a princess walk past them, do they?
No, especially if they're not dressed. Because if you look at some of the icons in social media, you could argue you're the same. Right? I'd expect to see you dressed as I see you on your social media. If you're not dressed like that,
if I go out with a big mustache or something,
yeah.
blonde wig,
different hat on, different sunglasses on, dress a bit differently. It's incredible how you can merge into a crowd. It's that fieldcraft is very, very interesting. Anyway, paparazzi came. And we had a bit of a scuffle with them. They were very aggressive because some of those photos then reportedly were being sold for €1 million or $1 million at the time.
Wow.
So you can see why they want these photographs. And so one of the other bodyguards with me, there was a paparazzi guy with a security guy, very aggressive. And my friend knocked this guy down and off they went. And they said, right, we're going to tell everybody you're here now. And they were just trying to get a shot, you know. And anyway, the next day, you have never seen anything like it in your life. Hundreds of them. And then it got worse and worse. There was helicopters flying over this tiny little beach that we had in this massive estate. And there was old boats. There was boats of tourists coming past trying to see the princess. It was just mayhem. And then we had to look after the princess and the princes and the family, of course, for the duration of their stay, which was 10 days in the end. But the family obviously stayed there longer, and it was an extremely challenging time. And at that time, the Fayed family were being looked at by government forces and by others, obviously, because of the business that he was in and the things he was doing at government level. And why wouldn't they? And then the princes were there, and the princes came with two bodyguards, two policemen. Princess, obviously, she didn't have security; it had been taken off her by them. And we were that busy that the policemen jumped onto the team. They were an effective team member. So sometimes you'd be out with the princes, and the police wouldn't be there. They might be with Fayed's wife. They might be with the princess. So we all had to. It was so challenging. We all had to just do what we needed to do to look after these people. And we designed these things where we could get the family onto a boat or the helicopter or whatever and get them somewhere that they perhaps didn't know where we were going. So they could at least have 2 or 3 hours playing, just like, as a family would. And then they'd discover where we were and then we'd move on. So understanding how it all works, it was easy to spot people who were surveillance teams looking at us because you just get it, And we went down towards the town and took the family towards to get them on the ship, to take them out to a beach, I don't know, about an hour and a half away. And I came up with this cunning plan. Luckily, it worked. So I was in the rear armoured vehicle of a convoy of about probably 6 vehicles, taking all the family and everything you need, all the bottle, the maids and the butlers, everybody goes. And it's just a complete, it's not a circus, but when you're moving millionaires from place to place, you would not believe the stuff you've got to take. It's just crazy. And so I made a route that went down this really narrow road, and you could just get a car down. So I said, right, we'll be the tail end Charlie on this convoy, and when we get down there, we'll stop our vehicle and I'll open the doors. So even when the paparazzi are pushing against us, they'll be wedging the doors into the walls. Does that make sense? So they couldn't get past us. Anyway, the first people down there were people on motorbikes, but high-powered motorbikes. The paparazzis were generally on scooters and things like this. Well, they came down first, and we had a standoff with them, and they were Brits, and the language that they spoke was military language. And you just know when you meet a military person. So they said, you're not going to let us pass, though. We said, lads, no, and we're going to do whatever it takes, So they said, right, it's all right, lads, and off they went. So we knew they were a surveillance unit. And this is my point about this. Why wouldn't they be there? We actually felt good that they were there looking after us because we had the heir to the throne was there. You know what I mean? The British government aren't just going to send these people off with 2 policemen. So it wasn't a big shock to me. It was a big shock to me after, when I was at the coroner's inquest and all the rest of it, it was denied. So that was a bit like, whoa. So anyway, we have the time there with the princess, and she spoke to me about a lot of stuff. You know, I'd sit in the morning and chat to her on the beach, and I'd take her off on the boat to the ship and stuff like this. And she told me that she was going to live in America, which at that time it wasn't a big deal for me. And she was telling me she couldn't take the kids, and we had a big conversation about it. It's in the book, and I spoke about this at the coroner's inquest as well. But after that, all this was denied. It's fact now. We know it was fact now. But at the first trial, after her death, there was a big problem with this piece about her moving, and I don't know why that was. And I think that's why these theories, people have these theories about what happened. It's because a lot of things they just don't get. Why did they say that? And then, so I get it. But anyway, so she's now going back out with Dodi, and she was very fond of him. And it's the first time in 4 years I'd seen Dodi happy and smiling. And that was the effect she had on everybody. She was an incredible woman. Her invisible PR was nuts. The things that she did that people saw that weren't meant to see. You knew she was that person inside, you know. It wasn't a show. It was how she was. She was an amazing woman. And I could talk to you for hours about her. And I've studied her in depth. And I use some of the things she did and said now when I'm coaching people. And I speak about this as well. But anyway, so she's now going back out with Dodi, and Trevor Rees-Jones, a very good friend of mine, a fantastic guy, and a guy called Kes Wingfield went with Dodi and the princess, and then obviously looked after them in Paris, where that tragic accident happened in the tunnel, which was the biggest thing that ever happened in the world at the time. She was the most famous person in the world for people who were too young to remember her.
I think I was 7. And I remember when it happened, and the teachers basically said, this has happened. I didn't really understand it. And they said, just draw a picture about what had happened. And everyone literally just draw pictures of car crashes. Quite a weird thing to get children to do on reflection, but I guess it was just to, understand it a little bit more. But yeah, I was a kid at the time.
It's the whole world almost stopped, and since then, when I do talks about it, and, I've been on cruises talking about this for special events and stuff. And when you meet people of that certain age, that can remember, and I always say, remember where you were. They used to call it a JFK moment. People like my parents now remembered where they were when they heard JFK died. Well, it's the Princess Diana moment. Everybody will remember not only where they were, but what they were doing and how they felt. And I always ask them the second question: how did you feel about Diana? 99.9% of them say, I loved her. Never met her.
How did you feel when you found out?
Well, it was a shock. It was a massive shock, and I was getting updated real time as to what was happening, because I was back on leave now. I was back home. We just had a big family barbecue. I hadn't seen my family for a while, and generally, if I was doing that, I'd just go to bed and clean everything up in the morning. I lived on my own, and I'd stayed up cleaning stuff, and I don't know why. Anyway, I got a call. It was late at night that it had happened, and I was finding out. So before it even come on the news, I knew what had happened, and I knew that Trevor was extremely badly injured, and I'd lived with Trevor for 4 years, and then I knew that Dodi had died. And again, it was, the princess died, but Dodi died as part of the family. It's the boss, we used to call the boss's son. The children now work with their brother. So it was, and then obviously the princess died, and it was like almost like a family bereavement, I would say. It was just so upsetting and so shocking, because Trevor and Dodi, and obviously the princess that I'd worked with. And when you work with somebody in their family closely for 10 days, and you're seeing them every day and doing stuff with them, you do get a bond with them, Yeah, so it was.
What is it that you believe sort of happened with? Do you believe there was something else going on? I know you mentioned sort of theories there and things.
Yeah. It's quite a delicate situation, Lewis, as to what happened, but I honestly believe it was an accident. I honestly believe that there were security services in that tunnel at that time, whether they were French or British or a mixture of two, and they just couldn't be seen to be there, and they had to leave. And then what happened after the incident, because she died, it was a small tear in her lung that killed her. It was her injuries were okay. She had a broken arm, and some minor bruising, but it was this tiny bleed that killed her. Had they have got her to hospital, had me and you have been there and we'd have picked her up, we could have got her to hospital quicker than she got there. So there's this whole piece about why did it take so long? Why was the scene jet washed straight away? Why was this? And people ask me this all the time, why was her body partially embalmed when they never do that? And was she pregnant? Was this? And so it just leads to all these questions. And this will go on after we've passed away. People will be still talking about this. But I just believe it was a tragic accident. Something clipped the car, possibly. And there you go. The criminal investigation into Henri Paul, the driver, was so flawed, and some of the things that happened, and one in particular, which the readers might like to understand, is when they searched his flat, he was a pilot as well, so he'd taken his medical for his pilot's license, and he was found to be fit and healthy, no issues. When the police first went into his flat, a small flat, they found 2 bottles of alcohol, 1 half full. That's it. 3 days later, they go back and they discover enough to stock a small bar. So the question is, and the question was put to them in the inquest, the coroner's inquest, which came out years after the initial hearing, was, is it possible it was put there? And the answer is yes. Yeah, it was. Because they would never have missed it. And then just that one small thing starts people thinking, why? Why would that? Why would they do that?
The question there is that because there was some cover up, or was that because they were trying to just close a door to it and put the blame on somebody so that no one sort of speculated any further?
I think so. I think it was let's get this blame out as quick as we can and let's get this done and dusted in a way. And which really, when things like that happen, as in the JFK incident, which obviously I've studied, it's part of my industry, and the various different rounds that were fired by this firing point, and once you start asking questions and it doesn't add up, that's when people, and was it covered up? I don't know. I've actually worked with somebody who was on that detail. One of my claim to fame in our industry is one of the most famous guys in the industry, and I've actually worked with him. And although we didn't discuss the incident at great length, but we did discuss it. And he was very candid about what he actually said. But it's the 2 incidents, although they're totally different, I think it just captured the world's imagination. And to a certain extent, at the time, wherever I go and people speak about the princess, everyone's just intrigued with this situation and what happened. But I remember being at the Twin, just outside the Twin Towers, shortly after, the princess's death, 12 months, 2 years after. My brother works in New York, so I go out there, and we're in this like a Cheers bar type thing, the old-fashioned Cheers bar. It's great, lots of people. So I got to the toilet, and at that time I told nobody what I did. Nobody, I just wouldn't discuss it. And I came back from the toilet, and my brother's sat at the table, anxiously looking at me, with a queue going outside the bar. I was like, I wonder what they're waiting for. Me, because he told them he used to be Princess Diana's bodyguard, and they were all queuing up to shake my hand.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, mate. And I looked at my brother, and I'm like, you ever do this again, I'm going to kill you. I was shocked, and he was like, I didn't realise this was going to happen. I'm saying, no, that's crazy.
So how did that feel? Because that, I guess, was your first sort of taste of people respecting and admiring kind of your work, I guess.
Shivers down my spine now. It's horrible.
Right, you didn't like that then?
Hated it. And having worked with celebrities, because Dodi Fayed was a film producer, and worked with various celebrities, and seeing how they have to live with this, it's just incredible. I can never do it. The most horrendous thing I could ever think about doing is being that person,
Putting aside Princess Diana, because she seems to be quite a rare individual, some of these other celebrities you've worked with, we mentioned Sylvester Stallone and sort of other people like that. Are they different behind, closed doors?
Yeah, totally different. And when you work with these people, and I've worked with quite a few people in different jobs over the years, and behind closed doors, you start seeing the actual person, who they are. And sometimes it's a shock, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's a shock without kind of going into detail with any specific person. And some people, these people, they behave in a way which is quite shocking. And
I've heard that about quite a lot of people, really.
Yeah, and it's it's a lifestyle I would hate to have. Some people, some of them like it, some of them don't, but some of them, you know, just really underconfident. Their lives are a mess. Heavily addicted to drugs, which you get for free when you're that important, and all that stuff that's going on in their lives. And you think when you see these people, they've got it all sorted out. They've got all the money, they've got the looks, they've got the partner, and some of them, it's quite sad, you know, and it's just a lifestyle I wouldn't want to wish on any of my family and friends, you know.
Would you say some of them are unhappy?
Yes, yeah, yeah, and you see in the news, don't you? You know, all sorts of stuff. You know, the mental health issues that they have is just incredible because they have to keep up this persona, their ego of what they think people think of them rather than what they think of themselves. And then, also, you know, when things go wrong, it could be scandal, it could be paparazzi taking a shot of them doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. And all of a sudden, this pack of cards starts falling down. And all you've got at the end of it is who you are inside, right? And if you're not happy with that person inside, and the world knows that this thing you've been portraying to everybody that you are isn't actually real, well, you've got nothing.
Mm.
And it's very sad. You know, we should start coaching these people, mate, and try and sort. Yeah.
They've probably got a whole team of people around them, to be fair. You know, they're probably not getting the support they need, I guess, by the sounds of it.
No, and I think some of these people, you know, it's hard to reach out to them because their ego goes crazy because of the way that they've been brought up and the things that they've done. And also, when you get extremely rich, you get very, very intelligent overnight.
You what, sorry?
When you get very, very rich, you get very intelligent. So everybody listens to what you're saying and they all nod in. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, you're so good. Yeah, I get that. And it's like the Emperor's New Clothes. I've been there going, no, this is nuts. What are you saying?
Yeah.
They're there. So now they start believing what they're saying, and it's total rubbish. You know, and I've been with some of these people, you know, and I think one of the best things that I like to do is when I speak to these people, and I speak to them like we're chatting now, it's probably the first time they've been spoken to like that for 10, 15, 20 years. And it's just like, wow, I've got a real person here that's not frightened of me. They're telling me as it is in a really nice way. This is pretty cool.
And just something that just popped to my mind when you were talking there. When I was doing some research, I saw one of the headlines that came up. I think they referred to you as Rambo.
Yeah, mate.
So tell us about that. Where did it come from?
I hate this piece, but it's quite funny. She had a nickname for all the bodyguards.
Okay.
And it was Harry that got this out. We were sat on the ship traveling around, and the princes used to sit with all the bodyguard team. We used to chat about the military. They were fascinated by the military at that such a young age. And we had some really cool guys on the team who'd done some of the iconic things in the military, you know, from the SAS on the balcony, Iranian balcony, to all sorts of stuff. And they were just fascinated by it all. And Harry said something like, Mummy's got a nickname for you lot. And you could see William go, no, she don't know. She's told us not to tell him. And you were like, go on, spill the beans. Come on, lad.
Yeah.
So, and he looked at me. She got a nickname for you as well. I said, right, okay, what is it? She went, Rambo. All the rest of the security team were like, wow. You know, I never lived that down. So
well, I'd say there's worse nicknames you could have, to be fair.
I know, but in that environment, that's pretty uncool. But yeah, so that was quite funny. But you know, I've worked all over the world, you know, and it's funny how such a small place. I worked in Libya. I've worked in Libya quite a lot during the war, and in Somalia, the places I kind of like to work, and Nigeria. And that's a hostile work environment, you know. But I worked out there, and I was looking after somebody who was working on behalf of the British government, who was actually on the Princess Diana inquiry, and that was an interesting conversation I had with him. A very, very senior person, you know, and we both were kind of saying the same thing. There's that many things that don't add up. You're always going to get these conspiracy theories, always, you know, because things just don't actually add up. So
there's a bit of a question mark on that. Do you think any ever other information will ever come to light on it?
I'm not sure, you know, Lewis. I think the subject is so unique. I don't think so. I think
that it was only recently, a couple of weeks ago, someone was just arrested for Tupac's murder, right? Did you see that?
Yeah,
And this was, however many years ago. I don't know how many years ago that was, but that was a decade
yeah.
ago, right? So things do come out later on down the line, I guess, and you see these stories online about how some little girl's been found 30 years later, and now she's 36. She's been locked in a dungeon, and you know
Yeah.
what's going to come out, and what new information, or someone on their deathbed finally speaks. So who knows? There could be a
You never know, but I think because it's so politically sensitive, and I do believe it was an accident, but I do believe that it won't be good for the nation. It won't be good for anybody to find out exactly what happened, in case it just doesn't go with the narrative, because people are going to go, "Oh, we'll be betrayed. Why don't you tell us?" And our secret service, we can call it that, one of the best in the world, and they have to remain secret to look after us. So I don't think it's going to be in anybody's interest to kind of speak about it. So I don't think it'll ever come out, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So you think even if something was to transpire, it would just get put away again?
I think so, yeah. I think it's best left alone.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So what came for you after all the Princess Diana stuff, and any sort of other things that led you up to with the conversation we were having recently about you in lockdown wanting to share these messages with the world?
Yeah. So I went from that job, and I did a few small contracts and this and that, and I started to grow my martial arts business. Things changed in my life after Princess Diana died. I left the Fired team, moved to Scotland, and then I got more and more set up the martial arts into a really, really good business, and got people to manage it. And I started doing more and more security, and did quite a lot of work in Nigeria and some other stuff in the UK for various people. And then I did some really interesting work out in Somaliland, where we were the first team in, or one of the first teams in, to assist an oil company who were opening up oil concessions to get the oil out. And so I went out there, trained up about 400 of their, they call themselves special force police, not like we would understand. They're quite, they need a lot of training, these people, lovely people. So we went on a training mission there, 4 of us, and it got quite bad, actually. And there's a lot written about the book if everybody wants to really understand what happened. But needless to say, we had to get escorts in and out of here because there was people trying to kill us as we were going in and out of this training camp. Where we live in real tough conditions, really tough conditions. And then I went out on operations then as a mobile manager, making sure that all the coastal protection teams were doing what they were supposed to be doing and looking after these oil people who were going out into these massive areas looking for the oil positions where they could put the oil heads. It's quite a complicated operation. And then we were getting shot at, and it was something like Avatar. You see that Avatar, the film Avatar? So they were bulldozing through these people's lands, through their kind of burial grounds. It was horrible what was happening. They were throwing spears at us at one stage. I kid you not. It was just horrendous, and rocks. And anyway, we had to evacuate. So we evacuated these executives and these people who work for this oil company. There's probably about 70 of them in a 72-hour period. On a landing strip that we'd kind of made in the desert on a 12-seat to Djibouti. And then they left the whole security team there. Anyway, it's a long story, but we managed to escape. And it was a really tense time. And you think, hang on, there's a high likelihood we're going to die here. Anyway, so it was a great contract as well. Apart from it all going wrong, lovely people, love the country, just got it. And so that contract finished. And then I was in the airport in London, and I called another friend of mine, and I said, look, the contract's just collapsed. And as you know, when you're earning good money and you've committed to buy things and change your life and all that, because it was extremely good money. He said, I've got something in Libya. Do you want to pop over? So I said, right, okay. So I went home, got changed literally, went back down and shot out to Libya, where Gaddafi the First War had happened, Gaddafi had been killed, and all this was going on. So it was a period of time where all the international community were helping them to try and get the country back together again. And I was working on a big project doing exactly that with some of our top military, police, prison officers, all sorts of stuff. And we were looking after their security, popping around in armoured vehicles and looking after them. And then that was a great job. I did that for quite a while. And then I went out then with the EU, and they have a border assistance mission where they try and close down the porous borders of these countries. So I was working on that mission. I was in charge of the whole coordinating all the close protection teams, and we had I think we had 7 teams of big teams of close protection guys taking out all their various people throughout Libya. And then the second war happened then when we were in, and it started with the Battle of Tripoli Airport, right? We knew things were going wrong, so we were trying to get a charter plane on standby or something just in case it kicked off, and we knew it was going to. And I was in the airport with my team, 4 armoured vehicles, and we were in this disused building, which was weird. I knew all the combat indicators were there. I knew something was going to happen. And we have local drivers that I trained up, and I knew something was on 50 degrees, right? And you got all your gear on, carrying all your weapons and your ammo and all this kind of stuff, sweating like mad. And we're in this building, this disused building on the 2nd floor. So God knows what temperature it was up there. And I'm looking at the drivers, and my instincts are telling me there's something wrong here. They weren't speaking to me in the manner that they did. And I was like, what is wrong? So I said to them, like, come out the cars, out the aircon, out the cars, and into the building. And they were going, no, Mr. Lee, we're not going in there. They're bad men. Because everything was run by militias, you see. And I'm thinking, right. So I took all the keys out of the vehicles, put them in my pocket. Luckily, because what they were going to do when we went in, they were going to drive off and leave us there. So as we were there, the Battle of Tripoli Airport started. There's rockets coming down the road at head height, and it was just crazy. So we managed to get out, and they were blocking all the road with burning tyres. And just like, there's a film called 13 Hours in Benghazi. And, you know, if anybody's interested to find out what it was like there, that's one of the most realistic films you'll get about what was going on in the country, you know. It's incredible. And so we got back, and this goes on for a while. It's a big drama. And in the end, we evacuate. The airports are shut, the ports are shut. We've got Al-Qaeda and ISIS on one side. They've got the militias on the other. And they're on this battle right over where we are, right in the middle of it, for weeks and weeks. And we had swimming pools in this compound we were in. And the swimming pools were like boiling water, shaking with them, you know, with things landing by you, and there's fire coming in. It's just incredible. And over a period of time, as human beings, we can adapt to anything, you know. And I remember one time I'm doing a call with my brother in New York, and we start getting shot at, and there's these rounds coming in, and my brother's like, "What's happening?" I said, "No, it's okay, Brian. Just wait a minute. Don't go off the phone," because we had a real bad signal. I just got in after weeks of trying. I said, "I'll just get under a table." So I get under this table, this big marble table. I'm still chatting to him. He has post-traumatic stress from that incident, you know.
Right.
And for me, I'm like, this is pretty cool. I'm speaking to my brother. So eventually, I took a team out, and we tried to get out. We took about 5 of the EU clients, as we call them, and we drove about a 3-hour road move right through ISIS territory and all the way up. We have fixers, people that fix stuff for you. So we were handed over from militia to militia to militia, and you're just hoping and praying that these militia aren't going to turn bad on you. And we got up to Tunisia, up to a place called Rajastir, where all the immigrants the refugees are trying to leave the country. Thousands, tens of thousands of people, and we're winding our way through them. And then the Tunisians they open fire on these people because they're busting over the border point, shooting them. Anyway, it's a long story, but we get the clients safe, and we get them to Tunisia. Now we've got to turn around and go back and get the rest of them. You're like, nuts, mate. And at one stage, when it's a long story, but this is a very, very strong turning point in my life. So we're on the roof of this compound, this place we're in. If you looked at it now, you'd think you're in Afghanistan or something like that. And we're on this roof, taking up this firing positions for when we get attacked. And I'm talking to my friends who I know very well, and we keep close contact, because we found out the person who was supposed to get all the ammunition put in the armory never ordered it. So all we had was the ammunition we were carrying. That was it. And so we knew we'd only have 5-10 minutes. And we'd be dead. Simple as that. But the worst thing was we didn't want to get captured, because we knew what would happen. if we got captured by these people, you're on telly, and I know it's horrible to think about you. You're gonna get beheaded, and it's gonna be filmed, and we just didn't want that, obviously. So we're deciding, now who's gonna kill who with your last few rounds, and we're having a conversation like we're having now, a very calm conversation about it. So so they get the banter then, don't you? Well, I'm gonna kill you. And then Lee, you're going to kill him. And I'm, whoa, who's going to kill me? I'm not being last. No, you kill me. I'm not going to be last. But when you have that conversation, you're kind of making light of a real bad situation. And when you're contemplating your life, and I know you've had some real bad situations in your life, Lewis, but you start thinking about things and putting yourself at one, because you're putting yourself at one. This is me. I'm done. And you start thinking about things, and you generally think about the people you love, and you think about these people, and then your friends that you love. You don't think about your tax bill. You don't think about somebody who's ever given you hassle. That's not important to us as human beings. It's very people that we care for and love, and you think about them, and you put your house in order, and if you've led a good life and you've tried your best, and you're okay with yourself at that point. And at that point, I was thinking about the princess, and I didn't think anything more of it, but later I was like kind of perplexed. Why was I thinking about her? And that kind of turned my life around quite a bit, because how she'd affected me, she affected millions of people all over the world. And then I started to question, how? Why did she do it? How did she do it? And that led me along the path of becoming some people would say one of the best coaches in the world on the sporting front, and it's allowed me to understand what you need to do to become a world leader.
Amazing. And is this the time where you started to want to share messages with people and do your speaking and start writing your book?
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And I went back out to Libya. This is nuts, right? So I come home. I've nearly died twice now, once in Somalia, once in Libya. So I come home, and I'm at home for a while, about 12 months, and I get a call. The British government wanting to re-establish their platform in Libya again. You've got so much experience there, and we need to train the people who haven't been there. Would you come out and do it? And I said, yes. Right. And I'm thinking, what am I doing? But when you're asked to do something, you're really good at something, and you get an opportunity. When somebody asks you, would you come back out on the team? And it's a feeling of contribution, I think we have, Lewis, that especially when it makes you feel good. So I went out, and the situation there changed so quickly from relative peace back into war again. So there I am again, sat on the top of a building with my rifle, this time, thankfully, like buckets of ammunition, thinking I'm going to die again. That's the third strike now. And making videos to your family, saying goodbye to them, all this kind of stuff. And I had a chat with myself on this rooftop, and I said, Lee, if you get away from this is it now. God's sending you a message here. Enough, brother. So that's the last close protection hostile job I did, and that was at the end of 2016.
Wow. Not too long ago then. And no. So, and then you wrote your book a few years later, right? The pandemic started.
Yeah, wrote my book during lockdown. And then since then, I've done a lot of training people going into the close protection business here and overseas. Here, Spain, Saudi Arabia, some other countries. And I thoroughly enjoy that mentoring piece. I'm also a mentor for the United Nations. So I'm a trained mentor. And rather than being an instructor or a coach, my style, natural style of training people is as a mentor trainer, and it works so well. And I'm quite well known for it, and I get good results, and I love doing it.
Nice. And what sort of? I know we briefly spoke about it earlier, but what sort of things are you up to now? I know that you don't do the hostile stuff, but every now and again you still have one foot in, right?
Yeah, I do some consulting for people. I've just been doing some consultation for something in Africa, but I do it from home now. And but I do mentoring things. I'm going back out to Saudi Arabia next year for a few months, teaching some executives and doing some mentoring pieces for them, and teaching them how to get their teams to be high performance teams in their industry, which I like doing. So I'm doing that. Talking, I do quite a lot of talking, motivational stuff, but more on the side of teaching people how to be a good leader, and then in turn how they can lead their team to be an elite team. And this whole thing, when when you look at it, people say, how do I become good? How do I get my team to be a high performing team? So you get all this stuff to do this, say that, this model, that model, the wheel of this, this of this, and you do it all. But what we fail to understand is, unless you yourself are an alpha leader, no matter what you do, you're not going to lead that team. No matter what you do, they will never be the best that they can be unless you invest into yourself and understand how to be a leader. And a lot of things, as you know, Lewis, I mean, look at you, you're a leader, natural leader. It's not what you do for yourself, it's what you do for others that make you a good leader. How you don't criticize. You give top cover all the time. You're there for them. They trust you. They know when it hits the fan, you're the person who's going to step up for them and lead them. And once people understand that, then they start doing things for other members of their team and all the rest of it, integrity, being smart, being on time. They're habits. We can get that. But it's when you really care for your team and you can release these we chemicals in them. So not only do your team feel you're a leader and that you've got their back and they trust you, they love you. And when you start getting that love and that trust in your team by understanding how to release the chemicals in these people, then you have an unstoppable team that can achieve anything. And I love teaching people how to do this. It really turns me on. I love it. My martial arts team, we've got 20 odd people in my team. If I called them at 1 o'clock in the morning, they will all get out of their bed and they will be there. Wow. Because they know if they call me, I will be there for them.
They're not scared you're going to beat them up, are they?
Some of them are tougher than me.
That's when you know you built a good team.
It is, and I've worked at it, and I've been that person that will go an extra yard for them, do anything for them, took their kids on holiday for them, do anything for them because I love them and they love me, and that's why we have one of the best coaching teams in the world. It's fantastic.
Wow, love that. So, if anybody watching, who because the message of this podcast is adversity is to assets. You've obviously had these difficult times in your life, some when you were growing up and also some difficult traumas that you've used to kind of learn something from rather than let it beat you down, which, a lot of people might fall into that trap. What would you say to someone who's had adversity into their life that's looking to try and make the most of it, but can't quite see through that right now?
Yeah, I think one of the main things I would say to them, Lewis, is this. All the people that you have conversations with in your life that, help you and this and the other, the person you have the most conversations with is yourself, right? So start with you. And I'm such a big believer in affirmations because you get up in the morning or you go to bed at night and you're busy, you've got being pulled everywhere, might have some trauma yourself or something's going on, and you just fall into the day and you're just driven by the day and your feelings. So when you do these positive affirmations, not of what you'd like to be, what you're going to be, and see yourself as that person that you want to be and you're going to be, as if you've already done it, and you say your affirmations every morning and every night about how you look, but how you feel, and envisage, this works so well for athletes, envisage yourself being that person and what it's going to look like, and see yourself being that person. You'll get the release of the oxytocin and the dopamine, and you'll get all that. So you're feeling what it's going to feel like before you get it, and it's going to inspire that day to keep that feeling and remind you of not the situation you're in, where you're going, what it's going to feel like. And then just before you go to bed at night, there's reasons why you should do it first thing in the morning and last thing at night when your brain can take it in better. And you do it last thing at night, subconsciously, you're changing your whole mindset, and it's so powerful. And then once you start doing that, these things will start appearing in your life. When I coach people, this is interesting. When I coach people, I tell them in depth how to do this and various other things. And most people will do it for a little while. So, it's great success, the business is flying, the relationships are great, everything's great. And then all of a sudden, they'll do a course with me or had spent some time with me or whatever the situation is. And then a month later, I always call people. I always like to follow up on people, because I feel, I like to do it. And I'll phone them and say, how's it going? Oh, well, I say, right, stop. Are you doing your affirmations? no, I stopped. Why on earth would you do that? Get on it again.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say to him.
I remember I was in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and Narcotics Anonymous meetings, and they would say, yesterday's shower doesn't keep you clean today. And they're making reference to obviously getting clean and sober, but it works the same way. You know, you can't do it yesterday and expect that it's going to get you the same results today. You got to keep doing it. You know, that consistency and discipline. And sometimes it's those easy things we miss, don't we? Because we think, I've done that. It's easy. It's not going to make a big difference. But it's actually the simplest and the easiest things that make the most difference sometimes.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah.
So get your affirmations in, guys, and it can be as simple as writing down a few things you want to say to yourself and embodying that and believing it. And not only are you going to feel better, but there's also that manifestation and bringing it into your reality as well, isn't it? Through constantly speaking it, you're more likely to go out and seek those things. So it doesn't. I think a lot of people think it just has like an internal effect, but it can also bring a lot of stuff into your life as well. Like you said, with yourself as a champion, you're more likely to actually go out there and not just persevere towards it, but if you believe it's going to happen, you're more likely to actually attract that and receive that into your life.
If you do things in line with that belief, we have a big saying in our school for our kids, and it applies to everybody. I love doing this. All the kids shout this: dream it, believe it, achieve it. How true is that?
Very true. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story today. It's been great to get to know you in more detail. If anyone wants to connect with you or learn more about what you do, what's the best place for them to find you out?
Well, you see my name. It's an unusual name. So I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, all the various social media. But they can also jump in on the Sansom My Name Warrior Mindset, which is a podcast I do with my son, and we talk about all this kind of stuff, and it's pretty cool, and we have a good time.
Cool. So get your Google. It's SANSUM, and that will be in the link and the show notes and everything like that. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, Lee. Thank you very much.
I've really enjoyed it, Lewis. Really.
Thanks very much, and everybody listening, tune in next week for another episode of Adversity to Assets. Thanks very much, guys. See you later.